I still remember that Sunday evening. The December wind cut through the walls, slipping under doors and windows like icy fingers, even though I had on 3 layers. I was in the kitchen, my hands submerged in soapy water, scrubbing dishes I had cooked for 8 people. It wasn't my dinner. It never really was. I cooked it, served it, and then stayed behind to clean up the leftovers like some invisible shadow that didn't belong at the table. They didn't call me Mara. To them, I was her, that girl, the helper. And then I heard it. I was in the corner of the kitchen, trying not to clatter the plates because my hands were shaking from the cold. The house was warm, the fireplace crackling away, but I wasn't allowed near it. Let the grown-ups sit, they'd say, even though I was 29, married to their son, a legal adult with a beating heart and a mind full of feelings. The voice came loud and clear from the living room. She's used to scraps. Just put her in the garage. I froze. The sponge slipped from my hand into the sink with a soft plop, but to me, it was deafening. It was my mother-in-law who said it. Her tone was light, like she was commenting on an old chair that no longer matched the decor. One of my husband's cousins giggled. Seriously, Auntie? You think she'd be okay sleeping in the garage? Why not? My mother-in-law replied. Her family didn't even have central heating. She grew up on stale bread and expired canned food. Trust me, she's used to it. And then, laughter. The kind of laughter that doesn't cut like a knife, but dull, dragging across your skin, leaving bruises instead of scars. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong. Because I had no tears left to give. I dried my hands slowly, left the pile of dishes unfinished, and walked upstairs. The room I used to share with my husband was locked. He wasn't home that night, on a work trip, or so he claimed. I no longer knew what to believe. I pulled out an old tote bag from the closet and packed a few things. A knitted sweater my mother had made me in college. A notebook of handwritten recipes. And a photo of me and my father, the only man who ever called me his girl and looked like he meant it. I walked down the stairs with my head low. No one looked at me. No one asked where I was going. They simply moved out of the way like I was a shadow passing through, clearing a path for something unworthy to occupy their space. The garage was cold. No heating, no windows, no bed. Just a single flickering bulb dangling from the ceiling, casting yellow light like an interrogation room in some crime drama. I placed my bag on the floor and unfolded a thin blanket I'd brought with me. The cement floor beneath me was so hard, my back started aching the moment I lay down. But I didn't complain. I lay still, staring at the moldy ceiling above me, and asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for months. How did I end up here? I'm not stupid. I saw the red flags. I just loved him. We met when I was waiting tables at a small cafe on the edge of town. He came in every Tuesday morning, always ordered the same cappuccino with oat milk, and brought a different book each time. He wasn't like the others, he didn't rush, didn't stare at his phone every 5 minutes. He smiled at me. He asked what I was studying. When I told him I used to major in nutrition but dropped out to care for my mother, he didn't flinch. He just nodded and said, "Then you already understand sacrifice." I fell for him like a woman desperate to believe in safe land after drifting at sea. He took me to the first nice restaurant I'd ever been to. He held my hand in public. When he proposed, I thought I'd won the lottery. But that dream cracked the first day I walked into his family's house. His mother looked at me the way you might look at a fly buzzing around your dinner plate. "This girl is from where, exactly?" she asked, raising one perfectly plucked brow. At our first dinner together, she handed me plastic chopsticks while everyone else used polished silverware. I laughed it off. Told myself it was just unfamiliarity. That time would melt her. That kindness would soften her sharp edges. I was wrong. As a daughter-in-law with no dowry, no degree, and no poise as she liked to say, I was a smudge on her perfect family portrait. And it didn't matter how well I cooked or how early I got up to clean. To them, I'd always be second-hand. Every day, I cleaned the house top to bottom. I learned how to make each person's eggs exactly how they liked them. I laughed politely when their guests joked. I served tea, folded laundry, scrubbed grout. And I always sat in the farthest chair at the table, if I was even allowed to sit. That night, in the garage, my body aching and my pride in pieces, I pulled out my phone. The last message from my husband simply read, "Busy." No check-in. No "I'm sorry." No "Are you okay sleeping on concrete?" I don't know how long I slept. I remember waking to the sound of a motorcycle roaring down the street. Then silence again. I got up the next morning and, like clockwork, cooked breakfast for the family. No one mentioned the garage. No one asked if I was cold. They ate their eggs and bacon and sipped their coffee like nothing had happened. And again that night, I went back to the garage. I started thinking about leaving. But where would I go? I had no family. No job. No money. My bank account had been merged into my husband's. My friends lived out of state, scattered across the country like dots I could never afford to connect. I had no safety net. No backup plan. Just me. And the garage. And then, the next morning, something happened. A black limousine pulled up in front of the house. I was washing dishes, like every morning, when I heard the sound of tires crunching over gravel out front. At first, I thought it was a delivery. But then I heard the low, silky purr of an engine and the soft click of a car door opening. I stepped away from the sink, wiping my hands on the worn dish towel slung over my shoulder, and peeked out through the narrow window beside the front door. A sleek black limousine was parked at the curb, long, elegant, out of place in our plain suburban neighborhood. A woman stepped out. She wore a cream-colored coat that hit just below the knee, leather gloves, heeled boots, her hair pulled into a classic twist. She wasn't flashy rich. She was power rich. The kind of woman you wouldn't dare speak to unless she invited you first. She stood there a moment, taking in the house, then turned to her driver, a man in a dark tailored suit. "Ask for Mara," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I only want to speak with Mara." My heart stopped. My mother-in-law opened the door, a practiced smile stretching across her face like a mask. "Good morning. Can I help you?" The woman didn't smile back. She didn't greet her. She just stared, unblinking, and repeated, "I'm here for Mara." Silence fell in the house. My sister-in-law stepped out from the living room, eyebrows drawn tight. "Do you mean?" "Mara, our helper." That word again. Helper. As if I was a hired hand. As if I wasn't married to their son. As if I hadn't spent the last year being their unpaid maid, cook, and emotional punching bag. The woman's face didn't flinch. "Yes. That Mara. Go get her." My mother-in-law stammered. "Is there a reason why you're here?" "A message, perhaps?" "Just get her," the woman said flatly, for the first time narrowing her eyes. "She'll understand." I don't know what made me come out of the kitchen in that moment. Maybe instinct. Maybe hope. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in months. I straightened my sweater, smoothed my hair, and stepped into the hallway. The woman's eyes landed on me, and something in her expression softened. Just slightly. "There you are," she said. "I've been looking for you." We sat in the limousine. My mother-in-law didn't protest. My sister-in-law froze like a statue when the door shut behind me. No one knew who this woman was. I didn't either. "Why are you looking for me?" I asked, trying to steady my hands under the weight of the moment. She didn't answer right away. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a cream envelope, placing it in my lap. "Because you don't belong there. And I need someone like you." I opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Me, 22 years old, standing in my tiny college apartment kitchen, holding a tray of muffins, smiling like the world had never hurt me. I had never seen this photo before. "Where did you get this?" I whispered. She smiled softly. One of my employees took that photo 6 years ago. He never forgot the way you helped an elderly woman who collapsed in the alley behind the cafe you worked at. You brought her water, called the ambulance, stayed with her the entire time. I remembered. The woman had no ID, no insurance, and was terrified of being taken away. I told the paramedics she was my grandmother, just so they wouldn't question her. That woman, the lady said, was my aunt. She had advanced dementia and had wandered away from her caregiver. You saved her. I stared at her, stunned. I didn't know. I know, she replied. That's what makes it even more remarkable. Somewhere between that moment and the next, I started crying. Her name was Eleanor Grange, CEO of a major food conglomerate. Why now? I asked. Why come for me now? Because I finally found you. And because I have an offer. We pulled up to a tall building in the city. The sign out front read, Grange Culinary Foundation. She led me through bright halls, test kitchens, conference rooms, and finally into a warm kitchen space, clean countertops, industrial ovens, handwritten menu drafts on clipboards, and a wall of herbs growing in sunlight. If you want, she said, you can start here. Learn everything from scratch. We'll cover housing, tuition, supplies, all of it. No strings. And if after 3 months you change your mind, you walk away free. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the space like it might disappear. Why me? I asked again. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, because people like you deserve more than scraps. You deserve a seat at the table. That night, I went back to the house for the last time. No one said a word. No apologies. No questions. Not even my husband, who had finally returned, pretending like everything was fine. I went into the garage, packed my old tote bag, folded the thin blanket I had been sleeping on, and stood for a long moment, just breathing in the silence. I didn't belong there anymore. 3 months later, I stood in that same kitchen Eleanor had shown me, holding a wooden spoon and teaching 3 interns how to make Nordic potato soup, the same one my father used to cook during long winters when we couldn't afford meat. Eleanor walked in, leaned against the doorframe with a proud smile. You've got the fire, she said. Now you've got the kitchen. I didn't just relearn how to cook. I relearned how to live. I used to be the girl they shoved into a garage because I was used to scraps. But then a woman in a limousine showed up, not because she pitied me, but because she saw something in me I had forgotten to see in myself. That I was worthy. That I was not second-hand. That sometimes, fate doesn't knock. It pulls up to the curb, honks once, and waits for you to be brave enough to get in. I had started to rebuild my life from scratch, brick by brick, hope by trembling hope. It was slow, tender work, like healing sunburned skin. Every part of me had to relearn what safety felt like. What kindness felt like. What choice felt like. I wasn't just learning to cook again. I was learning myself again. Eleanor never hovered. She wasn't the type. But every week, she'd check in, sometimes with a small gift, a new apron, a vintage spice grinder, a book about women who started over. Sometimes, she'd just sit in the corner with her tea while I chopped vegetables in silence. She let me have space, but I always knew she was near. 3 months passed. Then 4. And for the first time in years, I felt a rhythm. The house they gave me was small but mine. The kitchen at the foundation became my sanctuary. And every Sunday, I cooked one dish just for me, no audience, no husband, no judgment. Just me, salt, oil, and silence. But peace has a funny way of being interrupted. It was a Thursday afternoon when the past came knocking. Literally. I had just finished a workshop on pastry basics with a group of young women from a halfway house. I loved working with them. They reminded me, girls who'd been told too many times that they weren't worth much more than leftovers. I was wiping down the counter when someone from reception walked in. There's a man at the front, she said. Says he knows you. Says he's your husband. I dropped the cloth. The world didn't spin. It tilted. Like someone had pulled the rug of my reality half an inch to the left. I hadn't seen him since the day I packed my bag and walked out of that garage. He hadn't called. He hadn't written. Not even when the divorce papers arrived. I thought I was finally free. I took a breath. Then another. My hands were shaking. When I stepped into the lobby, there he was. James. Still handsome in that polished, distant way. His hair was shorter. His coat expensive. His tie looked like it belonged on a TV anchor. And yet, he looked smaller somehow. Like time had trimmed down the ego he once wore like armor. "Mara," he said softly. I didn't answer. "I've been looking for you," he said, stepping closer. I didn't move. "Why?" He swallowed. "Because I think I made a mistake." I almost laughed. A mistake? Leaving me to rot in a garage while he dined with his mother every night in silk pajamas was a mistake? "You didn't make a mistake," I said, voice even. "You made a choice." He flinched. "I know I didn't protect you," he continued. I didn't speak up. But I didn't know, I didn't realize how bad it got. I stared at him. "You slept on the other side of the wall. You knew." He had no words. Behind me, I felt the quiet hum of the kitchen. The sound of women laughing in the back room. The warmth of the space I had built. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was just done. James came with stories. That his mother had fallen ill. That the house was quieter now. That he had started therapy. That he thought of me every day. That I was better than they ever deserved. "I'm not here to make you beg," he said. "I just want a chance to talk." I shook my head. "I don't want revenge, James. I don't even want an apology. I just want to live a life where I never have to shrink again to make someone else comfortable." He blinked. And then I said it. "You're not my story anymore." That night, Eleanor and I sat in her office. I told her everything. She nodded slowly, her hands folded in her lap. "Do you want us to intervene?" "No," I said. "I already handled it." Then she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You don't need anyone to validate your worth, Mara. But if life ever tries to tell you you're not valuable again, you fight back like someone who's tasted freedom." I did. The twist didn't end there. A few weeks after James showed up, I received a letter from the Kindling Foundation, a women-led organization that funds female chefs and food entrepreneurs from underserved backgrounds. Eleanor had nominated me, without telling me. They offered me a $50,000 grant to open a small community food studio. A space where women like me, forgotten, discarded, underestimated, could cook, teach, share, and be seen. I named it The Table. Because every woman deserves a place at one. The grand opening of The Table was on a cloudy spring morning. The air smelled like rosemary and orange zest. We served spiced lentil soup and olive oil cake, all cooked by women who once thought they had nothing left to give. My first speech was short. I stood in the center of the room, in my white apron, heart pounding like a drum. "I was once told I was used to scraps," I said, voice shaking. "That I didn't need much. That I could survive in a garage." I paused. But survival isn't the same as living. And I don't want to survive anymore. People clapped. Some cried. Eleanor beamed from the front row. "From now on," I finished, "I take up space. I feed others. And I feed myself too." They said I was used to scraps. But I'm not. I'm used to fire. To steel. To breaking the cycle. I am no one's afterthought. I am not the girl in the garage anymore. I am Mara. And now, I own the kitchen. Sometimes I lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling in my small but safe home, and I try to retrace the thread. The moment when my life stopped unraveling and instead began to reweave itself into something stronger, softer. Mine. That thread begins and ends with her. Eleanor. But to understand what Eleanor did for me, you have to understand what it means to be seen, really seen, when you've gone invisible for too long. When I think back, I realize that even before the limousine, even before the envelope and the photo, there were signs that something bigger was watching over me. Quiet signs. Hidden moments that felt like nothing at the time, but now, they shine like tiny lanterns in my memory. Like the time I made cookies for the kids in the neighborhood, even though my pantry only had flour, sugar, and one lonely egg. Or the night I stayed up hand-sewing curtains from old pillowcases to make the cold garage feel like something other than punishment. Or the hours I spent helping Mrs. Linton across the street after her hip surgery, even though I had nothing to offer but time. I didn't do those things for attention. I did them because they made me feel like I still mattered. Like I hadn't been erased yet. But someone saw. Eleanor told me later that the first time she heard my name was from her aunt. Yes, the same woman I had helped years ago when she collapsed behind the cafe. Her aunt didn't remember much anymore, but she remembered the name Mara. She had such kind eyes, she told Eleanor one night, and strong hands. Like she knew how to hold people together. Eleanor didn't know what it meant. Not until months later, when a young intern mentioned a woman who worked like a ghost in her fiancé's family home, cooking, cleaning, never speaking, like she'd been folded small enough to fit into people's blind spots. Her ears perked up. What was her name? She asked casually. The intern hesitated. I think. Mara. And something clicked. Eleanor never told me how long she searched for me. Just at the moment she found me, she knew she had to come herself. I don't send other people when I'm trying to change someone's life, she told me once. If it's real, I show up. That day in the limo, I didn't ask why me. Not really. I didn't have the language for it yet. But later, when we sat together, just us, in her herb garden behind the foundation, I finally asked the question that burned in my chest. Why did you care? She looked at me, really looked, and said, because once, a long time ago, I was you. Eleanor's story was never in magazines or press releases. She never shared it at fundraisers or galas. But with me, one night after we both stayed late testing recipes, she opened up. Quietly. Like someone handing you a dish they'd cooked from their childhood, fragile and sacred. She grew up in a house where love was a transaction. Where beauty was currency. Where silence was rewarded. She had married rich, young, and disastrously. I spent 7 years, she said, pretending I was fine while my husband shrank me, inch by inch. I stopped eating for a while. Then I started baking, just so I had something to taste that was mine. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. I left one morning with nothing but a rolling pin and a pair of flats, she said. Everyone told me I was foolish. That I was giving up diamonds for dough. But I needed to start over. To find something real. Something I could build with my own hands. That's how she found food again. Not the gourmet kind. The human kind. The kind made in church basements and soup kitchens and night shelters. The kind that feeds the soul. And one day, she said, someone gave me a chance. A kitchen. A second-hand stove. A key. So now, every time I see a woman with that same fire hiding under soot, I give her the same. It was the first time I cried in front of her. Not because her story was tragic, but because it made me feel like I wasn't alone. Like my pain had a twin somewhere in the world, and she had survived. That's when I knew Eleanor wasn't my savior. She was my mirror. She didn't come to rescue me. She came to remind me that I had always been capable, that I had always been enough, that sometimes all you need is someone to open the damn door and say, come in. You belong here. We became close, not in the way a mentor and student usually do, but in the way two women bond over shared bruises. Quietly. Unspokenly. There were mornings we cooked side by side in silence, and afternoons we debated recipes until sunset. Sometimes she'd challenge me on something I believed about myself. "You say you're not a leader," she'd say, "but every time you walk into that kitchen, people follow." I'd shrug, uncomfortable. "Stop shrinking," she'd scold with a smile. "You're not furniture. You're fire." And she was right. With her belief in me, steady, patient, never performative, I began to unlearn what they had taught me in that house. That I was only valuable if I served. That my silence was more attractive than my voice. That comfort was for others, and I was made for hard places. Eleanor never made promises. But she made space. And for women like us, space is the greatest gift. The deeper our bond grew, the more I noticed something extraordinary. Eleanor didn't surround herself with yes people. She built her foundation from survivors. From misfits. From women who had been told no so many times that when she said yes, they bloomed. There was Ruth, who had escaped a cult and now ran the sourdough program. And Nadine, who used to live in her car and now managed our internship pipeline. And Sanaa, a refugee from Syria who couldn't speak much English but made the best za'atar flatbread you've ever tasted. We weren't a staff. We were a choir. Each of us with our own song of survival, singing louder now, because we had a conductor who believed we were worthy of being heard. Sometimes people ask me, what would have happened if she never showed up in that limo? And I used to say, I'd still be in that garage. But now, I say something different. I might have gotten out eventually. But I wouldn't have known who I was on the other side. Because it wasn't just the opportunity Eleanor gave me, it was the way she saw me. Not as a charity case. Not as someone broken. But as someone whole, just waiting for the right light to grow in. I remember one spring morning, we were prepping for a donor event. I was rolling out pie dough, elbow deep in flour, and she walked in, humming. She stood beside me, watching for a moment, then said, "You know, when I first saw you, you looked like someone who hadn't been hugged in a very long time." I chuckled. I probably hadn't. She looked at me seriously. "Well, now the world hugs you through every dish you make." It's true. Every bowl of stew I ladle. Every slice of lemon tart. Every spoonful of soup I stir. It's a hug for the girl I was. For the woman I'm becoming. And for every stranger who walks through my kitchen door needing a taste of home. Because Eleanor didn't just give me an opportunity. She gave me back my name. And every time someone says it now, Mara, it doesn't sound like silence or shame. It sounds like a beginning. The first time I heard someone call me Chef Mara, I froze. It was a young girl, barely 16, standing in the doorway of the table, her arms crossed, trying to act tough. She had just arrived from a youth shelter downtown, her caseworker trailing behind her, looking apologetic. "She doesn't talk much," the woman whispered. "And she's been through a lot." I nodded. I knew the type. I was the type. But then the girl raised her chin and said, "Are you Chef Mara?" I blinked. "Yeah. I am." Something cracked open in me. Quietly. Like the sound of an eggshell breaking against the counter. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just somebody's wife. Or somebody's burden. Or somebody's responsibility. I was somebody's goal. That moment was the start of my transformation. Not because I had finally made it. Not because I had money or attention or recognition. But because I finally saw myself, clearly, fully, for who I was. And I liked her. It's strange. People think transformation is this dramatic thing. Loud. Sudden. Like fireworks. But mine wasn't like that. It was gradual. Like waking up one morning and realizing the bruises, both physical and emotional, aren't there anymore. Like reaching for your wallet and remembering you can afford groceries this week. Like walking past a mirror and, instead of avoiding your reflection, you pause. You smile. Because you like who's looking back. The truth is, I didn't change in one night. I changed slowly, steadily, with every active choice. The choice to sleep in a bed instead of the floor. The choice to eat what I wanted, not just what was left. The choice to say no. The choice to say yes to myself. And perhaps the most radical choice of all. The choice to take up space. I remember the day I taught my first solo workshop. I was terrified. My hands were sweating, my voice shook, and I dropped a whole tray of eggs on the floor before class even started. But those women, dozens of them, sat there, eyes on me, waiting for me to lead. They didn't care about perfection. They cared that I showed up. So I showed up. Every week after that, I grew stronger. Bolder. My voice grew louder, my laughter more frequent. I stopped apologizing every time I spoke. I stopped folding myself into corners. I started walking into rooms like I deserved to be there. And soon, people followed. By year 2, the table had become more than a kitchen. It was a movement. We were feeding people who had been forgotten. Training women who had been told they were useless. Healing with every bite. Rebuilding with every recipe. We had partnerships with local farms. Women-led nonprofits. We even made the news, once for serving 500 meals during a city blackout using only donated ingredients and solar ovens. I remember the journalist asking me, "What made you believe you could do all this?" And I said, without hesitation, "I didn't believe it. But someone else did." And eventually, I started listening to her voice instead of the one in my head. The transformation wasn't just in how others saw me. It was in how I saw myself. I started dressing differently. Not to please anyone else, but to celebrate me. Bright colors. Patterns. Earrings that jingled when I moved. I painted my nails red, something I hadn't done since I was 21 and still believed I was worth noticing. And I looked damn good. But more than that, I felt good. Not because I was trying to be someone new, but because I was finally becoming who I had always been underneath the shame. Eleanor noticed the change before I did. "You walk like a woman who knows the ground is hers," she said one day. I laughed. "It's about time." She smiled. "Took you long enough." But my favorite part? The ripple effect. Every woman who walked through the table took a piece of that fire with her. I watched women arrive broken, ashamed, silent, and leave confident, radiant, dangerous in the best way. I saw them apply for jobs they never thought they'd get. Start businesses. Write cookbooks. Testify in court. Reclaim their kids. Reclaim their bodies. We weren't just cooking. We were creating freedom. One meal at a time. One night, I found an old photo of myself. From the garage. I was sitting on a stool, stirring a pot of soup I probably wouldn't even get to eat. My hair was tied back. My shoulders slumped. My eyes vacant. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I tore it in half. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to mark the moment. The moment I stopped being her. The moment I became me. My transformation wasn't loud. But it was fierce. It was in every boundary I set. Every no I spoke without guilt. Every time I chose peace over pleasing. Every time I refused to shrink. I stopped waiting for people to pick me. I picked myself. And in doing so, I became the woman I once dreamed about when I sat on a cold floor in a dark garage, wondering if anyone would ever see me. Now, they see me. But more importantly, I see myself. I never went back to that house. Not physically, at least. There were days I thought about it, about walking up the driveway in a tailored coat, with confidence in my step, and looking them in the eye just once. Not to shame them. Not even for closure. But simply to say, "You were wrong about me." But then I realized I didn't need to. Because I was never going back to that garage, in any sense of the word. Not in memory. Not in spirit. not in worth. The truth is, life rarely gives us neat resolutions. There's no perfect ending. No cinematic scene with swelling music and applause. Sometimes, the most powerful endings are the quiet ones. The ones where you exhale and realize you're finally free. Free from needing to prove your value. Free from shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Free from believing that scraps are all you deserve. These days, my life is filled with small, sacred moments. The laughter in the kitchen when someone burns a batch of muffins and we all pretend it's smoked flavor. The warmth in my chest when a girl looks at me the way I once looked at Eleanor, hopeful, hesitant, daring to believe in something bigger. The softness of my own pillow at night, knowing that I am safe, not because someone allowed it, but because I claimed it. These are the things I hold now. Not diamonds. Not approval. But peace. And peace, my friend, is the most luxurious thing I've ever known. Sometimes women come up to me after a workshop or a talk. Their eyes shine with unshed tears. They fidget with their sleeves, their voices trembling. And they ask, "How did you do it?" I always answer the same way. I stopped believing them. Them. The voices. The people. The system. The ones who said I was only good for cleaning up their mess. The ones who fed me silence and called it stability. The ones who looked at me like I was invisible, then acted surprised when I disappeared. I stopped believing them. And I started believing in me. That belief didn't arrive all at once. It came in pieces. The first time I made soup from scratch and someone said it tasted like home. The first time I said no without apologizing. The first time I slept 8 hours without waking up in panic. The first time I laughed, really laughed, and it didn't feel like rebellion. Little by little, I rebuilt my soul. Brick by brick. With love. With dignity. With the courage of 1,000 forgotten women standing behind me, whispering, "Go. Take up space. Your story matters." And now, I want to say that to you. Yes, you, the woman listening to this, maybe in your car, maybe late at night, maybe hiding in the bathroom with tears in your eyes because you're just so tired of being small. I see you. I was you. And I want you to know something, with every cell in my body. You were not born to survive on scraps. You were born to create. To shine. To be held. To be seen. To be loved, not just for what you give, but for who you are. You are not too much. You are not too loud, too emotional, too sensitive, too broken. You are exactly enough. Right now. As you are. With or without the perfect ending. If you're still in your version of the garage. If you're still being told to wait, to settle, to serve quietly while the world passes you by. Please know. There is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with the room you've been placed in. And you do not have to stay. Leaving won't be easy. I won't lie to you. It will hurt. You will doubt yourself. You will wonder if maybe you were the problem. But keep going. Keep walking. Because on the other side of that pain is the most glorious version of yourself, a woman who doesn't beg for crumbs because she knows she can bake her own damn feast. And she will. Oh, she will. I think a lot about that girl in the garage. The one who stirred soup with trembling hands and bit her tongue so hard it bled just to stay quiet. The one who believed love was earned by sacrifice, and that safety had to be bought with obedience. I mourn her. I honor her. But I don't carry her anymore. Because I don't need to. She got me this far. Now it's my turn. And one last thing, because I want to say this before we part. If someone ever looked at you and said, "She's used to scraps," look back at them, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and say, "Not anymore." Then walk. And never look back.